George Strait stops concert to help blind fan, then does the unthinkable. The Nashville amphitheater vibrated with anticipation as 20,000 voices merged into a single roar. Amanda Collins pressed her fingertips against the metal railing, feeling the pulse of excitement that rippled through the crowd like electricity. She couldn't see the sea of cowboy hats or the stage lights that painted the night sky in blues and golds, but she could feel everything, the warmth of bodies pressed close, the scent of leather and cologne mixing with summer air, and most importantly, the collective heartbeat of thousands waiting for one man. "He's coming out now," Melissa whispered in her sister's ear, her voice barely audible above the crescendo of cheers. "The band's taking their positions. Oh, Amanda, the stage looks incredible tonight." Amanda smiled, her unseeing eyes bright with tears she refused to let fall. 5 years of darkness hadn't dimmed her ability to paint pictures in her mind. She knew exactly how George Strait would look, that familiar black resistal hat tilted, just right, the pressed Wrangler jeans, the way he'd grip his guitar like an old friend. She'd memorized every detail from the hundreds of concerts she'd attended before the world went dark. Her fingers found the small medallion hanging from her neck, a miniature guitar her father had given her 20 years ago when she was just 14. The metal was worn smooth from countless touches, a talisman that connected her to memories of sitting on their porch swing, her father's rough voice harmonizing with George's songs, crackling through their old radio. Those were the days when she could still see the sunset painting the Texas sky in impossible shades of orange and purple, when her father's eyes would crinkle at the corners as he sang along to Amarillo by Morning. Ladies and gentlemen, we want to thank each and every one of you for joining us here tonight in Nashville. We know you've got choices when it comes to spending your Saturday night, and we're honored you chose to spend it with us. Now, before we get this show rolling, I want to remind you to subscribe to our channel if you're watching this online later. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from, whether it's right here in Tennessee or somewhere across this beautiful country. Your support means the world to us, and we love hearing your stories about what this music means to you. The first chord rang out, and Amanda's breath caught in her throat. Check yes or no. She knew it from the first note. Her body swayed. Instinctively, muscle memory from decades of dancing to this very song. Beside her, Melissa squeezed her hand, understanding without words what this moment meant. "Middle school dance, 1995, Amanda murmured, and Melissa laughed softly. "You wore that awful purple dress Mom made you wear." "It wasn't awful. I loved that dress." Amanda's voice carried a defensive note that made her sister smile. "Tommy Morrison asked me to dance during this song. And you stepped on his feet the entire time." "Only because I was nervous." Amanda's laughter mingled with the music. I could see his face turning red, but he was too polite to say anything. The crowd sang along, 20,000 voices becoming one, and Amanda's voice rose with them. She knew every word, every inflection, every pause where George would smile, that crooked smile she could no longer see but remembered with crystal clarity. Her world might have gone dark, but the music painted it in colors more vivid than sight ever could. "You okay?" Melissa asked during the instrumental break, noticing how tightly Amanda gripped the railing. "Perfect," Amanda replied, and she meant it. These moments, these 3 hours every few months when she could afford tickets, were her sanctuary. Teaching music to elementary school children filled her days with purpose, but these nights filled her soul with something indefinable. Hope maybe, or just the simple joy of being part of something larger than her individual darkness. The smell of popcorn drifted past, mixing with someone's sweet perfume. A child somewhere behind them asked their parent why that lady had her. Eyes closed, and Amanda smiled. If only they knew she saw more with them closed than most people did with them open. Every chord George played painted pictures in her mind. her father's weathered hands teaching her first guitar chords, her mother humming in the kitchen while cooking Sunday dinner, the view from their hill country home that she'd never see again, except in memory. "I'm going to get us some water," Melissa said as the song ended. "You'll be okay for a few minutes?" Amanda nodded, her hand steady on the rail. She'd memorized the exact distance from their seats to the restroom, to the concession stand, to the emergency exits. Preparation was her way of maintaining independence, even if that independence was more illusion than reality these days. The next song began, "I Can Still Make Cheyenne," and Amanda's throat tightened. This one always hit different. It was playing in the hospital room, the day the doctors confirmed what she already knew. The experimental treatments had failed. The degenerative disease that started as blurry vision in her 20s had finally claimed the last pinprick of light. She'd been 29 years old, at the height of her career as a music teacher at Austin's most prestigious private school. Engaged to be married, her whole life mapped out in careful detail. Then darkness. Not the gradual twilight she'd been promised, but a sudden, complete eclipse. Her fiancé lasted 3 months before deciding he couldn't handle a blind wife. The private school found reasons why she could no longer meet their standards. Friends drifted away, uncomfortable with her new reality, unsure how to act around someone who could no longer see their faces. But the music remained. George's voice remained. Her father might have passed 2 years ago, but when she heard these songs, he was right there beside her, his off-key harmonies making her laugh, his big hand squeezing hers during the sad songs. "Ma'am, you need to move back," a gruff voice interrupted her reverie. A security guard, from the sound of his position and the jingle of keys on his belt. "I'm sorry." Amanda turned her face toward the voice, her clouded eyes unseeing but directed with practiced precision. "You're leaning too far over the rail. Safety regulations." "I'm just standing here enjoying the concert." Her voice remained calm, though her cheeks flushed. This happened sometimes. People assuming her blindness made her incompetent or dangerous. "Don't make me ask again." The unfairness of it burned in her chest. She'd been standing in the same position for 20 minutes without issue. But she'd learned that fighting these small battles often wasn't worth the energy. She took a small step back, her hand maintaining contact with the rail for orientation. "Amanda, what's wrong?" Melissa had returned, water bottles crinkling in her hands. "Nothing, just a misunderstanding." But the magic of the moment had cracked. The security guard's intervention had reminded her of all the ways the world had become smaller since she lost her sight. All the times she'd been treated as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. George was speaking now, his Texas drawl washing over the crowd like warm honey. He was telling a story about writing his next song, about love that endures across distance and time. Amanda tried to recapture her earlier joy, but a strange sensation was building behind her eyes. Not pain exactly, but pressure, like someone was slowly inflating a balloon inside her skull. "Melissa," she started to say, but the words came out slurred. The opening notes of "I Cross My Heart" filled the amphitheater, and 20,000 people swayed as one. It was her favorite song, the one her father had danced to with her mother at their 25th anniversary party, the one she'd dreamed of dancing to at her own wedding before life took a different turn. The pressure in her head intensified. Colors that couldn't exist burst behind her eyelids, not the remembered colors from her sighted years, but something else, something wrong. Her knees buckled slightly and she gripped the rail harder. "Amanda?" Melissa's voice sounded far away, muffled, like she was speaking underwater. "I don't feel—" The words wouldn't come. Her tongue felt thick, uncooperative. Then the pain hit, not gradual, not building, a lightning strike of agony that started at the base of her skull and radiated outward like an explosion. Her hands flew to her head, the water bottle Melissa had given her clattering to the concrete. "Amanda!" Melissa's scream pierced through the fog of pain. Her legs gave out completely. She felt herself falling, the rails slipping from her grasp, the concrete rushing up to meet her. The last thing she heard before the darkness, a different darkness than the one she'd lived with for 5 years, claimed her was George's voice, pure and true, singing about promises that last forever. Then nothing but the sound of her sister screaming and the distant echo of a love song that would forever be frozen at the moment her world changed once again. The music stopped. Not gradually, not with a fade. It cut off mid-verse like someone had yanked the power cord from the universe. 20,000 voices that had been singing in unison fell silent in confusion. George Strait's guitar hung in the air, the last note wavering into nothing as his attention snapped to the commotion in the front section. "Someone help her! Please, somebody help my sister!" Melissa's voice cracked with desperation as she knelt beside Amanda's convulsing form. The crowd had instinctively backed away, forming a circle of horrified faces, illuminated by phone screens already recording what they assumed would be viral content. From the stage, George squinted into the lights, trying to make sense of the disturbance. His band members looked to him for direction, instruments still poised, waiting for their leader's cue. But something in the quality of that scream, raw, primal, genuine, made his decision for him. "We need medical help down there," he spoke into the microphone, his voice cutting through the murmur of the crowd. "Security, get the paramedics, now." But George Strait hadn't become a legend by standing still when action was needed. He'd grown up on a Texas ranch where you didn't wait for help when someone was hurt. You became the help. Without conscious thought, he set his guitar in its stand and moved toward the stage edge. "Sir, you need to stay on stage." His security chief, Marcus, moved to block him. "We don't know what's happening down there." "Get out of my way, Marcus." The steel in George's voice could have cut diamonds. "That's not a discussion." The crowd gasped collectively as their idol descended the stage stairs, his presence parting the sea of people like Moses at the Red Sea. Camera flashes exploded around him, but his focus was laser-sharp on the small circle where a woman with dark hair was cradling another woman's head in her lap. "Please, she's not breathing right." Melissa looked up at him with eyes that didn't quite register who she was seeing. "She's my sister. She's blind, and she just collapsed, and I don't know what to do." George dropped to his knees without hesitation, his stage clothes immediately picking up the grime of the concrete floor. His hands, the same ones that had strummed 1,000 love songs, moved with surprising gentleness as he helped position Amanda's seizing body. "On her side," he commanded, remembering his ranch days when a hand had suffered a similar episode. "Keep her airway clear. You—" He pointed at a stunned fan. "Give me your jacket. We need to cushion her head." The security team had caught up now, forming a protective barrier around them. But George was oblivious to everything except the woman before him. Her face was pale, almost translucent under the harsh venue lights. Her eyes, clouded with blindness, moved rapidly beneath closed lids, as if she were dreaming some terrible dream. "What's her name?" he asked Melissa while maintaining his position supporting Amanda's head. Amanda Collins. She's your biggest fan. She's been to over 50 of your concerts." Melissa's words tumbled out in a rush. "Even after she went blind, she never missed a show when you came through Tennessee. She saves up for months for tickets." George's throat tightened. 50 concerts. This woman had spent what must have been a small fortune following his music across the years. His fingers found the small medallion at her throat, a tiny guitar worn smooth with age. "That was our daddy's," Melissa explained, seeing his attention. He gave it to her when she first learned to play, said she'd be a country star someday. Before she lost her sight, she was an incredible musician, taught at this fancy school in Austin. The paramedics finally pushed through, their equipment cases banging against the barriers. George started to move back, but Amanda's hand suddenly shot out, gripping his wrist with surprising strength. "Don't let me go," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "The music. I need to hear the music." "I'm right here, Amanda," George said, his voice gentle as a lullaby. "You're going to be okay. We're going to take care of you." The lead paramedic, a woman with steel-grey hair and eyes that had seen too much, began her rapid assessment. "Sir, we need you to step back now." "I'm going with her," George announced, the tone brooking no argument. "That's not protocol." "Ma'am, with all due respect, I don't give a damn about your protocol. This woman has been coming to my shows for years. She collapsed at my concert. I'm going with her." The amphitheater had gone eerily quiet, 20,000 people holding their collective breath as they watched their hero refuse to abandon a fallen fan. Someone in the back started a slow clap, but George silenced it with a sharp gesture. This wasn't a performance. This was real life happening in real time. As they loaded Amanda onto the stretcher, she began to speak, her words slurred but urgent. "Melissa, tell him about Amarillo. Tell him about Daddy." "Shh. Save your strength," Melissa soothed, but Amanda grew more agitated. "No, he needs to know. The sunrise. I can see the sunrise." George and Melissa exchanged worried glances. Amanda had been blind for 5 years. The paramedic's face grew more concerned as she checked Amanda's pupils with a penlight. "We need to move. Now," she commanded. "Possible stroke or aneurysm. Every second counts." The journey to the ambulance felt like a lifetime compressed into minutes. George held Amanda's hand while Melissa clutched her other side. The crowd parted silently, many with tears streaming down their faces, phones lowered out of unexpected respect for the gravity of the moment. "Mr. Strait, there's only room for one family member," the paramedic said as they reached the ambulance. "She's my family," Melissa said quickly, but Amanda would want him there. She's listened to his voice every single day since she went blind. It's the only thing that calms her during her panic attacks. George looked at Melissa with a mixture of surprise and deep emotion. "You go with your sister. I'll follow in my car. I promise I'll be right behind you." But as they loaded Amanda into the ambulance, her condition deteriorated rapidly. Her body went rigid, then limp. The steady beep of monitors became erratic. The paramedic's controlled professionalism cracked slightly as she barked orders to her partner. "She's crashing. We need to intubate." "No!" Melissa screamed. "Amanda, please, stay with me." George stood frozen as the ambulance doors slammed shut, the sirens immediately screaming to life. The sound seemed to break the spell over the crowd, and suddenly his security team was around him, trying to guide him back to the stage. "The show must go on, sir," Marcus said quietly. 20,000 people are waiting." George looked back, at the stage, then at the disappearing ambulance lights. In his entire career, he'd never walked out on a show. It was a point of professional pride, a sacred contract between performer and audience. But in that moment, all he could see was Amanda's pale face. All he could hear was her whispered plea about needing the music. "Cancel it," he said quietly. "Sir? Cancel the damn show." His voice rang out across the venue. Tell them we have a medical emergency. Refund everyone. I don't care what it costs." The crowd, still gathered in stunned clusters, began to murmur. But then something remarkable happened. A lone voice from somewhere in the middle section called out, "Go! Take care of her!" Another voice joined. "We understand, George." Soon, the entire amphitheater was chanting, "Go, go, go!" George Strait, the man who'd played through thunderstorms and equipment failures, who'd performed 2 days after his daughter's death because the show must go on, climbed into his waiting SUV with tears streaming down his weathered face. "Vanderbilt Medical Center," he told his driver, "and break every speed limit if you have to." The Nashville night blurred past the windows as they raced through the city. George's phone buzzed incessantly, his manager, his publicist, his band, but he ignored them all. His mind was spinning with questions. Who was Amanda Collins? What had her life been like before the darkness claimed her vision? What cruel twist of fate had brought her to his show, only to collapse during her favorite song? His driver, Paul, who'd been with him for 15 years, glanced in the rearview mirror. "That was a good thing you did back there, boss." "I haven't done anything yet," George muttered, watching the city lights streak by like falling stars. At the hospital, chaos reigned. The emergency room was a symphony of controlled urgency. Doctors barking orders, machines beeping, families huddled in worried clusters. George's presence caused an immediate stir, but he pushed through the recognition, focused only on finding Amanda. He found Melissa in the waiting room, her face buried in her hands. She looked up at his approach, mascara streaking her cheeks in dark rivers. "They took her straight to surgery," she whispered. They said it's a brain aneurysm, that it's been there for who knows how long, just waiting to rupture. If she hadn't collapsed when she did, if we hadn't gotten her here so fast." George sat beside her, this woman he'd never met before tonight, and took her trembling hands in his. "Tell me about her. Tell me about Amanda." So Melissa did. She painted a picture of a vibrant woman who'd refused to let blindness define her limits. She told him about Amanda's perfect pitch, how she could identify any note just by hearing it, about the elementary school where she volunteered, teaching music to underprivileged kids who couldn't afford private lessons, about the guide dog she'd refused to get because she was determined to navigate the world on her own terms. "She memorizes everything," Melissa explained. "Every step from her apartment to the grocery store, every street corner, every song you've ever recorded. I swear she knows your discography better than you do." George smiled sadly. "What about your father?" She mentioned Amarillo. "Daddy was from there originally. Used to drive trucks before he met Mama. He'd play your songs on repeat during long hauls. Said your voice kept him company during those lonely highway nights." Melissa touched the small guitar pendant at her own neck, a matching one to Amanda's. When Amanda started losing her sight, Daddy would describe sunrises to her in such detail that she said she could see them better than when she had vision. He passed 2 years ago. Heart attack. Amanda. She took it hard. Your music is one of the last connections she has to him. They sat in silence for a moment, the hospital sounds creating a strange backdrop to their shared vigil. Then George asked the question that had been burning in his mind since the ambulance left. In the ambulance, she said she could see the sunrise, but she's been blind for 5 years. Melissa's face crumpled. The doctors warned us that if her condition progressed to her brain, she might have hallucinations, visual disturbances that her mind would interpret as sight returning. They said it would be a very bad sign if it ever happened. The weight of those words settled over them like a shroud. George thought of all the sunrises he'd taken for granted, all the stage lights and faces in the crowd that were just part of his everyday existence. What must it be like to have all that stolen away, to live in perpetual darkness with only memory and music as your guides? "Mr. Strait?" A doctor in surgical scrubs appeared in the doorway. "Ms. Collins? I'm Dr. Sarah Chen, the neurosurgeon working on Amanda's case. Could I speak with you both?" They followed her to a small consultation room, the kind with soft lighting and tissue boxes that suggested difficult conversations happened here regularly. Dr. Chen's face was kind but serious, the expression of someone about to deliver news that would change everything. "Amanda survived the surgery," she began, and both George and Melissa released breaths they didn't know they'd been holding. "We were able to clip the aneurysm before it fully ruptured. She's incredibly lucky. Another hour, maybe less, and we'd be having a very different conversation." "Thank God," Melissa sobbed. "Can I see her?" "Soon. She's still in recovery. But there's something else we need to discuss." Dr. Chen pulled up some images on a tablet. The aneurysm was located in a very unusual position, pressing against her optic chiasm. That's where the optic nerves cross. "We noticed something during the surgery." She paused, seeming to choose her words carefully. "The pressure from the aneurysm may have been contributing to her blindness. Now that we've removed that pressure, there's a possibility, and I stress it's only a possibility, that some vision might return." The room went completely still. Melissa's hand found George's and squeezed so hard he thought his bones might break. "Are you saying she might be able to see again?" Melissa's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm saying we won't know until she wakes up and we can do proper testing. The retinal degeneration is still there, of course, but the additional pressure from the aneurysm may have been making it worse. Removing that pressure might restore some function. We've seen stranger things in neurology." "What about the hallucination?" George asked. "She said she could see a sunrise right before she lost consciousness." Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. "That's actually encouraging. It suggests her brain was trying to process visual signals, even if they were scrambled by the pressure. It's possible her optic nerves were sending information that couldn't get through properly. Now that the pathway is clear." She left the sentence hanging, possibility dangling in the air like a soap bubble that might burst if they breathed too hard. "When will we know?" Melissa asked. "She should wake up in the next few hours. We'll keep her sedated tonight. Let her brain rest. Tomorrow we'll begin assessments. But I need you to understand, even in the best-case scenario, we're not talking about full vision restoration. At most, she might regain some light perception, maybe shapes and shadows. And there's still a significant chance nothing will change at all." After the doctor left, George and Melissa sat in stunned silence. The possibility of Amanda regaining even partial sight seemed too miraculous to hope for, yet too precious to dismiss. "I should call work," George said eventually. "Let them know I won't be leaving Nashville for a while." Melissa looked at him in surprise. "You're staying?" "If that's okay with you and Amanda, I'd like to see this through. A woman who's been to 50 of my concerts deserves at least that much." "She's going to freak out when she realizes you're here," Melissa said with a watery laugh. "I mean really freak out. She has your picture, well, had your picture, on her wall like a teenager. Used to joke that your voice was better than therapy." George chuckled, but his mind was already racing ahead. The surgery was just the first step. If Amanda woke up tomorrow, she'd face either the crushing disappointment of continued blindness or the overwhelming challenge of adapting to partial sight after 5 years of darkness. Either way, she'd need support, medical care, rehabilitation. And from what Melissa had said about her volunteer teaching, Amanda didn't have the resources for extended treatment. "Can I ask you something?" he said carefully. "About Amanda's financial situation, the medical bills from this." Melissa's face fell. "She has basic insurance through the school district where she volunteers. It'll cover some of the emergency surgery, but the rehabilitation, the specialized care if her vision does return. We'll figure it out. We always do. Maybe I can take out a second mortgage on my house." "No," George said firmly. "That's not happening. Mr. Strait, we can't." "Except it's not charity," he interrupted. "It's an investment in someone who's invested so much in my music over the years. 50 concerts, Melissa. Do you know how much that meant to her? To spend that kind of money when she's living on a teacher's volunteer stipend." His phone buzzed. Again, his manager, no doubt having a coronary about the cancelled show and the PR nightmare of walking out on 20,000 fans. But as George looked at Melissa's tear-stained face, thought about Amanda lying somewhere in this hospital, with bandages around her head and hope hanging by a thread, he knew he'd made the right choice. "We should try to get some rest," he said finally. "Tomorrow's going to be a big day." "I can't leave her," Melissa protested. "Then we'll take shifts. You sleep first. I'll sit with her." "You don't have to." "Yes," George said simply. "I do." The ICU was a world of muted sounds and soft lights, machines breathing for those who couldn't, monitors tracking the rhythm of hearts that had forgotten their beat. Amanda looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, her head wrapped in white. Gauze, tubes and wires connecting her to the technology keeping watch. George pulled a chair close to her bedside, careful not to disturb any of the equipment. In the quiet of the night shift, with only the soft beeping of monitors for company, he found himself talking to her. "You know," he said softly, "I've played thousands of shows over the years, seen millions of faces in the crowd. But I remember the dedicated ones, the ones who show up rain or shine, who know every word to every song. You're one of those, aren't you, Amanda?" He studied her face, peaceful now in its unconsciousness. Without the stress of pain, he could see the laugh. Lines around her eyes, the determination in the set of her jaw. This was a woman who hadn't let life defeat her, even when it had taken something as fundamental as sight. "Melissa told me about your daddy, about Amarillo. I wrote that song thinking about my own mornings on the ranch, watching the sun come, up over the plains. Funny how music connects us in ways we never expect. Your daddy listening to my voice on those long highways, you carrying his memory through my songs." A nurse came in to check Amanda's vitals, smiling at George with the practiced calm of someone used to unusual situations. "She's doing well," she whispered. "Strong heart rate, good oxygen levels. She's a fighter." "Seems like it," George agreed. As the night wore on, he found himself humming softly. Amarillo by morning, of course. He thought about all the sunrises Amanda had missed, all the colors that had been stolen from her world, but also about the strength it took to keep going, to keep showing up to concerts she couldn't see, to keep teaching music to children when her own musical dreams had been derailed. Round 3 in the morning, Melissa appeared in the doorway, looking haggard but unable to sleep. "Any change?" "She's stable, resting, like you should be." "I couldn't. I kept thinking about what you said, about it being an investment." She moved to stand on the other side of Amanda's bed. "You don't know her, but that's exactly the word she'd use. She always talks about investing in her students, in their futures. Even when she can barely make rent, she's buying instruments for kids who can't afford them." "Tell me more," George encouraged, genuinely curious about this woman who'd literally fallen into his life. So Melissa did. She talked about Amanda's perfect recall of every student's name and favorite song, about how she'd developed a teaching method using touch and sound that was so innovative. The Austin School for the Blind had tried to hire her, but she'd turned them down to keep working with her regular kids who needed her more. She says music is the only universal language that doesn't need eyes to understand, Melissa explained. That a C major chord sounds the same whether you can see the piano keys or not. As dawn approached, painting the hospital room in soft grays and pinks that Amanda couldn't see, George made a decision. Whatever happened when she woke up, whether she faced continued darkness or the bewildering return of partial sight. He'd make sure she had every resource, every opportunity, every chance to continue her music and her teaching. Mr. Strait, Miss Collins. Dr. Chen appeared in the doorway looking remarkably fresh for someone who'd been operating half the night. She's beginning to show signs of waking. We're going to reduce the sedation slowly. Within the next hour or two, she should be conscious enough for us to do initial assessments. The moment of truth was approaching. George looked at Melissa, saw his own mixture of hope and fear reflected in her eyes. Whatever came next, Amanda Collins wouldn't face it alone. The music that had brought them together in such an unexpected way would carry them through whatever symphony or silence awaited. The first sign of Amanda's return to consciousness was a slight flutter of her fingers against the hospital blanket. Melissa gasped, grabbing her sister's hand while George quickly pressed the call button for the nurse. The room suddenly filled with medical personnel, their movements efficient but gentle as they checked monitors and adjusted equipment. "Amanda, can you hear me?" Dr. Chen's voice was calm and professional. "If you can hear me, try to squeeze your sister's hand." The pressure was weak but unmistakable. Melissa let out a sob of relief that seemed to come from her very soul. "She's squeezing. Amanda, I'm here. I'm right here." "Don't try to speak yet," Dr. Chen instructed as Amanda's lips moved soundlessly. "You have a tube helping you breathe. We're going to remove it soon, but first I need to check a few things." George stepped back, giving the medical team room to work, but his eyes never left Amanda's face. Her eyelids fluttered, struggling against the weight of sedation and trauma. When they finally opened, revealing those clouded eyes he'd noticed at the concert, the entire room seemed to hold its breath. "Amanda," Dr. Chen said softly, "I'm going to shine a light in your eyes. I want you to tell me if you notice anything. Blink once for yes, twice for no. Do you understand?" One slow, deliberate blink. The penlight clicked on. Dr. Chen moved it slowly across Amanda's field of vision. For a moment, nothing. Then Amanda's entire body went rigid. Her eyes, which had been unfocused and drifting, suddenly tracked the light's movement. A sound escaped her throat, muffled by the breathing tube, but unmistakably emotional. "Are you seeing the light, Amanda?" Dr. Chen's professional composure cracked slightly with excitement. "Blink once, if you can see the light." The single blink that followed might as well have been a thunderclap for the effect it had on the room. Melissa collapsed against the bed rail, sobbing. George found himself gripping the doorframe to keep steady. Even the seasoned ICU nurses were wiping their eyes. Okay, Dr. Chen said, her own voice thick. "Let's not get ahead of ourselves. We're going to remove the breathing tube now, Amanda. It's going to be uncomfortable, but I need you to cough when I tell you to." The next few minutes were a blur of medical procedures, but finally, blessedly, Amanda's raspy voice filled the room. "Melissa!" The word was barely a whisper, but it carried 5 years of dreams. "I'm here, baby. I'm right here." Melissa's tears were falling freely onto their joined hands. "I can. There's light. Oh God, there's light everywhere." Amanda's voice broke on the words. It's not like before. It's different, blurry. But Melissa, I can see light." Dr. Chen performed a series of quick tests, her excitement growing with each response. Amanda could indeed perceive light and darkness. She could detect movement when Melissa waved her hand. She couldn't make out details or faces, but after 5 years of absolute darkness, even these shadows and shapes were a miracle. "The swelling is still significant," Dr. Chen explained. "As it reduces over the coming days and weeks, your vision may improve further. Or this might be the extent of it. We simply don't know yet, but this is more than we dared hope for." Amanda was crying now, the kind of deep, healing tears that wash away years of grief. I thought I'd forgotten what light looked like. I thought, can someone open the curtains, please? I need to see if I can see the sunrise. George moved without thinking, pulling back the heavy hospital curtains to reveal the Nashville morning. The sun was just cresting the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold that would have made an artist weep. Amanda turned her face toward the window, and the expression that crossed her features was nothing short of transcendent. I can see it, she whispered. Not the colors, not really, but the light. Oh, the beautiful light. How's the pain, Amanda? Dr. Chen asked, ever the physician. Any headaches? Nausea? My head feels like someone used it for batting practice, Amanda admitted with a weak laugh. But Doc, I'd take 1,000 migraines for this, for even this much. It was then that Amanda seemed to register there was someone else in the room. Her unfocused gaze swept past George, then returned, as if some instinct told her this shadow was important. Melissa, she said slowly, why do I hear breathing from over there? Who else is here? Melissa looked at George, who nodded. This was her moment to share. Amanda, don't freak out, but George Strait is here. The monitors actually showed Amanda's heart rate spike. That's not funny, Melissa. I'm brain damaged, not stupid. Hello, Amanda, George said softly, stepping closer to the bed. Your sister's telling the truth, though I understand if you don't believe it. This whole night has been pretty unbelievable. Amanda's mouth opened and closed several times, no sound emerging. Then, in a voice filled with mortification, oh, God, I collapsed at your concert. I ruined your show. 20,000 people and I'm so sorry. You didn't ruin anything, George assured her. In fact, I'd say you gave me and everyone there a reminder of what really matters. The show can always be rescheduled, but being here when you woke up, that couldn't wait. You stayed? All night? We took shifts, Melissa interjected. He wouldn't leave, kept saying something about returning the investment you'd made in his music over the years. Amanda was quiet for a long moment, processing this information along with the overwhelming reality of her partial sight. Then she asked, in a small voice, what do I look like? I must look terrible. I can't even remember the last time I could. Check a mirror. George pulled a chair close to her bedside. You look like someone who's been through hell and came out the other side. You look brave. He sang to you, Melissa added. While you were unconscious, Amarillo by morning said he wanted you to hear it the way Daddy used to sing it. I can't. This is too much. Amanda's voice was thick with emotion. I'm nobody special, just a blind teacher who loves country music. You're a teacher who memorized 50 concerts worth of my songs, George corrected gently. Who saved money you probably needed for other things just to be there, who taught music to kids even after you couldn't see the instruments anymore. I'd say that makes you pretty special. Dr. Chen cleared her throat. I hate to interrupt, but Amanda needs rest. The next few days are critical for her recovery. We'll be doing more tests, starting some specialized therapy. The journey to maximize whatever vision she might regain is going to be long and challenging. About that, George said, pulling out his phone, I've already spoken with my manager. We're setting up a fund to cover all of Amanda's medical expenses. Whatever insurance doesn't cover, we will, including rehabilitation, therapy, equipment, whatever she needs. I can't accept that, Amanda protested immediately. That's too much. You don't even know me. I know enough, George said firmly. I know you're someone who finds joy in music, even when you can't see the stage. I know you're strong enough to face whatever comes next. And I know Melissa mentioned you turned down your own opportunities to help kids who need it. Consider this paying it forward. The room fell silent, except for the steady beep of monitors and Amanda's shaky breathing. She turned her face back toward the window, where the sunrise was now fully underway. My daddy used to describe sunrises to me after I went blind, she said softly. He'd use words like painting and canvas, talk about how the colors bled into each other like watercolors. I thought I understood, but now, even just seeing the difference between dark and light, I'd forgotten how beautiful the world could be. The therapy will be intensive, Dr. Chen warned. Learning to process visual information after 5 years of blindness can be overwhelming. Your brain has rewired itself to compensate for the lack of sight. Now it needs to remember how to interpret what your eyes are sending. It's not going to be easy. Nothing about the last 5 years has been easy, Amanda replied with a hint of her natural spirit returning. But I've had good teachers. Music taught me that the most beautiful symphonies come after the hardest practices. Over the next few hours, as news of Amanda's partial sight spread through the hospital grapevine, the room became a revolving door of specialists. Ophthalmologists, neurologists, occupational therapists, each one eager to assess and plan for this unexpected patient who defied the odds. Through it all, George stayed. He watched as Amanda underwent test after test, saw her frustration. When she couldn't make out the large E on the eye chart, witnessed her joy when she successfully identified which direction a hand was moving. He was there when she asked for a mirror and traced her own face with trembling fingers, trying to match what her hands felt with the blurry shadows she could perceive. "I look older," she said matter-of-factly. "The shape is different than I. Remember, thinner." "You look like a survivor," Melissa said firmly, "beautiful and strong." The occupational therapist, a cheerful woman named Patricia, began explaining the rehabilitation process. "You'll need to relearn basic visual skills, depth perception, spatial awareness, color differentiation, if that ability returns. It's like being a baby learning to see, except you have the advantage of remembering what things should look like." "Will I be able to teach again?" Amanda asked, and George heard years of fear in that simple question. "Music, I mean. The kids." "I don't see why not," Patricia said. "You've been teaching successfully without sight. Having even partial vision should make it easier once you adapt, though you might find your methods changing." "Speaking of teaching," George interjected, an idea forming, "I'm going to be in Nashville for at least a week, overseeing some session work. What would you think about co-teaching a few music workshops with me for your students? Once you're feeling up to it, of course." Amanda's sharp intake of breath was audible. "You want to teach with me, but I can barely see. I don't even know if I remember how to read music anymore." "You've been teaching without seeing for 5 years," George pointed out. "I'd say you've got skills most of us could learn from. Besides, those kids of yours deserve to see their teacher getting back on her feet. Might inspire them to face their own challenges." "The publicity," Amanda started, then shook her head. "No, that's not fair to the children. They don't need cameras in their faces." "No cameras," George agreed. "No publicity, just music, the way it should be." By afternoon, the initial excitement had given way to exhaustion. Amanda had pushed herself through every test, determined to make the most of this unexpected gift. But the toll was evident. Her hands shook with fatigue, and more than once George caught her rubbing her temples against the persistent headache. "You should rest," Melissa urged. "The doctor said not to overdo it." "I can't waste time sleeping," Amanda protested. "What if this is temporary? What if I wake up and the light is gone again?" It was George who understood the fear behind her words. "The music doesn't go away when you stop playing," he said gently. "It's still there when you pick up the instrument again. Rest, Amanda. The light will wait for you." Something in his tone must have reached her, because she finally relaxed against the pillows. Would you mind singing something? Not for a show or a recording, just singing?" George smiled, picking up the guitar one of his band members had thoughtfully delivered to the hospital. "Any requests?" You choose. Something quiet. Something Daddy would have liked. His fingers found the familiar chords of I Can Still Make Cheyenne, but he slowed it down, turned it into a lullaby. His voice, usually projected to reach the back of massive venues, became intimate, personal. He sang about cowboys and heartbreak, about distances that couldn't be bridged, and love that endured anyway. Amanda's breathing deepened, her face relaxing into peaceful lines. But just before she drifted off, she whispered, I want to see your face. When my vision gets better, if it gets better, yours is the first face I want to really see. George's hands stilled on the guitar strings. He looked at Melissa, who was crying again, then back at Amanda's sleeping form. In all his years of performing, all the fan encounters and meet and greets, he'd never felt the weight of someone's hope quite like this. We should let her sleep, Melissa said softly. She needs to heal. They moved quietly into the hallway, where George was immediately confronted with the reality of his fame. Several nurses were trying to look casual, while obviously hoping for autographs, and his phone showed missed calls from what seemed like every entertainment journalist in America. This is going to get complicated, Melissa observed, noting his grimace at the phone screen. The story's already gone viral. Country star abandons concert for fan. They're calling you a hero. I'm not a hero, George said uncomfortably. I just did what anyone would do. No, Melissa corrected. You did what George Strait would do. And that's why Amanda and thousands of others love your music. Because it's real. You're real. His manager was having a meltdown via text message, but George found he didn't care. The concert could be rescheduled, the interviews could wait, the whole machine of his career could pause for a few days. In that hospital room was a woman who'd found light in darkness, who'd kept teaching even when she couldn't see her students' faces, who'd saved every penny to attend concerts she could only hear. I meant what I said about the teaching workshop, he told Melissa. Once she's recovered enough, I want to see how she does it, how she reaches those kids without being able to see them. She says she listens with her whole body, Melissa explained, catches things other teachers miss because she's not distracted by visual cues. One time she identified that a student was being abused at home just from the way his breathing changed when certain topics came up. She's extraordinary. I'm beginning to see that, George agreed. As the afternoon wore on, George found himself fielding calls from his team while never straying far from Amanda's room. He watched through the window as she slept, noted the way her eyes moved beneath closed lids as if she were seeing dreams in her newfound light. His guitarist, Ron, arrived with updates from the band. The venue's been understanding about the cancellation. They want to know when we can reschedule. Not until I know she's okay, George said firmly, and not until she can attend. Front row seats, VIP treatment, the works. George, Ron said carefully, I get it. What happened was intense, but you can't put your whole career on hold for someone you just met. George thought about Amanda's fingers finding her father's medallion, about her voice rising with 20,000 others even though she couldn't see the stage, about the way she'd asked for the sunrise before anything else, when she realized she could perceive light. I'm not putting my career on hold, he said finally. I'm remembering why I started singing in the first place, to touch people's lives, to matter. Amanda reminded me of that. As evening approached, Amanda woke again, disoriented but immediately searching for the light from the window. Still there, she breathed in relief. I wasn't dreaming. Still there, Melissa confirmed, and getting stronger. The doctor says the swelling is already reducing faster than expected. Is he still here? Amanda asked hesitantly. I'm here, George answered from the doorway, though I can leave if you need privacy. No. The word came out more forcefully than Amanda probably intended. I mean, please stay. I still can't believe this is real. That you're real. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and find out the aneurysm caused hallucinations." "Well, George," said with gentle humor, "if I'm a hallucination, I'm a pretty detailed one. I even brought my guitar." Amanda's laugh was music itself. "Play something, please. My students always beg for live music. I play recordings, but it's not the same. They deserve to hear real music, performed with heart." "Tell me about them," George encouraged, settling back with his guitar. "Your students." So Amanda did, her voice growing stronger as she spoke about 8-year-old Marcus, who had natural rhythm but no confidence, about Maria, who hummed constantly but was too shy to sing, about David, who discovered he could express his autism through piano keys in ways words failed him. "They're why I get up every morning," she admitted. "Even in the darkest times, and I mean that literally, knowing those kids were waiting for me, depending on me to show them that music doesn't require perfect circumstances. It kept me going." George began playing softly, improvising, a gentle melody that seemed to underscore her words. "Sounds like you've been teaching them about more than music." "Music is never just about music," Amanda said with conviction. "It's about finding your voice when the world tries to silence you. It's about harmony when everything feels discordant. It's about—" She paused, her unseeing eyes somehow finding his shadowy form. "It's about connection, like how your songs connected me to my daddy even after he was gone." The melody George was playing shifted, became Amarillo by Morning, without conscious thought. Amanda's sharp intake of breath told him she recognized it immediately. "This was playing in the truck the day Daddy taught me to drive," she said, softly. "I was 16, terrified of the responsibility. He said life was like that song. Sometimes you lose everything except the dawn, but the dawn is enough if you know how to see it. I never understood what he meant until I lost my sight. Then I realized the dawn he was talking about wasn't literal, it was hope." Her fingers found the medallion again, worrying it between thumb and forefinger. "I'm scared, Mr. Strait. What if this is as good as it gets? What if I never see more than shadows?" George let the last note fade before answering. "Then you'll teach kids about music using shadows and light instead of just sound. You'll show them that even partial sight is a gift. You'll be the same extraordinary teacher you've been, just with a few more tools in your toolkit." "You don't know that." "I'm extraordinary," Amanda protested. "You've never seen me teach." "I've seen enough," George said simply. "And I meant what I said about those workshops. Your kids deserve to learn from someone who understands that music isn't about perfection. It's about heart." A knock on the door interrupted them. Patricia, the occupational therapist, entered with an armload of equipment. "Sorry to interrupt, but we need to do some evening assessments. See how your vision changes with different light levels." What followed was an hour of tests that revealed both progress and limitations. Amanda could now distinguish between colors if they were bright enough, though she couldn't name them accurately. She could see shapes well enough to count fingers from 3 feet away. In bright light, she could detect facial features as vague impressions, a shadow where a nose should be, the movement of a mouth speaking. "It's like looking through frosted glass," she explained, frustration creeping into her voice. "I know. There's a world out there, but I can't quite reach it." "Yet," Patricia said firmly. "You can't reach it yet. Remember, this is day 1. Your brain is literally relearning how to see. Be patient with yourself." But patience had never been Amanda's strong suit, as Melissa could attest. Even as a child, she'd wanted to master every song immediately, practice until her fingers bled rather than accept gradual improvement. "What if the kids don't recognize me?" Amanda worried aloud. "What if seeing me differently changes how they respond to the music?" It was George who answered, his voice carrying the weight of decades in the public eye. Kids don't see with their eyes as much as adults do. They see with their hearts, and from what you've told me, those students of yours have pretty good hearts." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of dinner trays, and George was struck by the simple intimacy of sharing a meal in a hospital room. Amanda struggled with depth perception, occasionally missing her cup or fork, but she laughed at herself rather than growing frustrated. "At least I can see that there's food," she said philosophically. "Even if I can't quite tell where it is in space, that's progress, right?" "That's definitely progress," Melissa agreed, helping guide Amanda's hand to her water cup. As they ate, George's phone buzzed with a message from his publicist. The video of him leaving the stage had been viewed over 10 million times already. News outlets were clamoring for statements, interviews, anything to feed the public's appetite for the story. "The media knows I'm here," he told them reluctantly. "They'll probably try to get to you, Amanda. I can have security keep them away, but you should be prepared." Amanda's face, what he could see of it in the soft hospital lighting, went pale. "I don't want to be a story. I just want to heal and get back to my kids." "Then that's what we'll make happen," George said decisively. "No interviews, no cameras, no intrusions. Your privacy is more important than their headlines." But even as he said it, George knew it wouldn't be that simple. The world loved a miracle story, and Amanda's partial sight recovery combined with his involvement was exactly the kind of narrative that would capture public imagination. "What am I going to tell my students?" Amanda wondered. "How do I explain that I can sort of see now? They've only known me as their blind music teacher. This changes everything." "Does it?" George challenged gently. "You're still the same teacher who helped Marcus find his rhythm and gave Maria courage to sing. You still hear music with your heart, not just your ears. Maybe now you can show them that change doesn't mean losing who you are." Amanda was quiet for a long moment, processing his words. Then, "Will you really come teach with me? When I'm ready, it would mean the world to them and to me." "I promise," George said, and meant it. "We'll make music together, you and me and your kids. We'll show them that sometimes the best songs come from the most unexpected collaborations." As night settled over Nashville, George found himself reluctant to leave. This hospital room, with its antiseptic smell and mechanical sounds, had become a strange sanctuary. Here, he wasn't the king of country music. He was just a man who'd witnessed something extraordinary and wanted to see how the story ended. "You should go," Amanda said, demonstrating the uncanny perception she'd developed during her blind years. "You must be exhausted, and you have a life, a career to get back." "Do. My career will survive another day," George replied. "Besides, someone needs to keep Melissa company during the night shift. Hospital coffee is terrible to drink alone." The gratitude in both sisters' faces was worth more than any standing ovation he'd ever received. As Amanda drifted back to sleep, her face turned toward the window where tomorrow's sunrise would paint new shadows for her healing eyes to discover, George picked up his guitar again. This time he played "I Cross My Heart," the song that had been interrupted by Amanda's collapse, but now it carried new meaning, a promise not just of love, but of presence, of seeing someone through their darkest hour into whatever light awaited. 3 weeks later, Amanda stood at the entrance of Madison Elementary School, her hand gripping Melissa's arm with nervous energy. The morning sun cast long shadows across the playground, shadows she could actually perceive now, even if they remained frustratingly vague. Her vision had improved beyond the doctor's most optimistic projections. She could make out basic shapes, distinguish colors in good lighting, and even read enormous print with the help of magnifying equipment. It wasn't normal sight, might never be, but it was infinitely more than the nothing she'd lived with for 5 years. "The kids are going to be so excited," Melissa assured her. "Mrs. Patterson said they've been counting down the days." What if I disappoint them? Amanda's free hand found her medallion in its familiar, nervous gesture. What if seeing me differently changes everything? Then we deal with it, a familiar voice said from behind them. Amanda turned, her improved vision allowing her to make out George Strait's tall silhouette against the morning light. He'd kept his promise, arranging his schedule to be in Nashville for this moment. Change isn't always bad, Amanda. Sometimes it's just different. He was carrying his guitar case, and something else, a small bag that rustled with mystery. Brought some surprises for the kids? Hope that's okay? You came, Amanda breathed, as if she still couldn't quite believe it. You actually came. I said I would. I'm a man of my word. He paused, studying her face in the morning light. How are the eyes today? Better. I can actually see your hat. She smiled, shy but genuine. Black, just like I always imagined, though your face is still mostly shadows and suggestions. Well, shadows and suggestions are better than nothing. Ready to make some music? The walk to the music room felt both eternal and too brief. Amanda's fingers traced along the familiar wall, muscle memory guiding her, even as her eyes tried to process the new visual information. She could see the bright construction paper artwork lining the hallways, even if she couldn't make out the details. The fluorescent lights created halos of brightness that made her squint, but she wouldn't close her eyes. Every photon of light was a gift she refused to waste. The moment they entered the music room, a chorus of young voices erupted. Miss Collins is back. 20 small bodies wanted to surge forward, but Mrs. Patterson, the veteran third-grade teacher, held them back with practiced authority. Remember what we discussed. Miss Collins is still healing, gentle hugs only. But Amanda was already moving toward their voices, her arms open. My babies. Oh, I've missed you all so much. One by one, they came to her. Marcus, whose rhythm had improved so much in her absence. Maria, who whispered a song she'd written just for Ms. Collins. David, who didn't speak but pressed a folded paper into her hand that she couldn't quite see well enough to read. Ms. Collins, a small voice piped up. Destiny, if Amanda's auditory memory served. Can you see us now? The room went quiet, 20 pairs of young eyes waiting for an answer to the question that had been buzzing through the school grapevine. Amanda knelt carefully, bringing herself to their level. I can see some things, light and shapes and colors. I can see that Destiny is wearing something bright pink, your favorite color, right? And I can see Marcus bouncing on his toes the way he does when he's excited. It's not perfect sight, but it's more than I had before. Does it hurt? This from Timothy, always concerned about others' pain, since his own battle with leukemia. Not anymore. At first, the light was overwhelming because I'd forgotten what it felt like. But now it's like when you're learning a new song. At first, the notes don't make sense, but slowly they become music. Miss Collins, Maria said softly. Who's that man? Amanda felt George step forward, his presence somehow reassuring, even in shadow. This is my friend, Mr. George. He's a musician too, and he's come to play music with us today. The name didn't register with the 8-year-olds, but Mrs. Patterson's audible gasp from the doorway certainly indicated that at least one adult had made the connection. Hello, everyone, George said, his voice warm and unpretentious. Ms. Collins has told me so much about you all. She says you're some of the best young musicians in Nashville. She did? Marcus's eyes went wide. She did. In fact, she talked about you so much that I had to come see for myself. Is it okay if I join your class today? The unanimous yes nearly shook the windows. What followed was magic of the purest kind. Amanda, despite her limited vision, moved through the room with the confidence of someone who knew every inch of the space by heart. She guided George to the circle where they always started class, her hands finding the box of simple instruments by touch rather than sight. "Mr. George," she said, her teacher voice emerging naturally, "we always begin with our rhythm circle. Everyone gets an instrument and we build the music together. Would you like to demonstrate with your guitar?" George, who'd played for presidents and stadiums full of thousands, sat cross-legged on the floor with 23rd graders and played simple chord progressions while they explored rhythm with tambourines, maracas, and drums. Amanda conducted with her whole body, her partial sight allowing her to catch movement, even if she couldn't see faces clearly. "Maria!" she called out, somehow knowing the girl was holding back. "I can see you hiding that beautiful voice. Remember what we practiced. Music is meant to be shared." Encouraged, Maria began to hum, then sing, a wordless melody that wove through George's guitar like silk thread. One by one, the other children joined in, creating a spontaneous composition that no Nashville studio could have planned. "That's it!" Amanda's joy was radiant. "Do you hear how each of your sounds makes the whole song richer? That's what music is. Every voice matters." George watched in amazement as Amanda worked. Her limited vision seemed almost irrelevant, as she caught every nuance of sound, every shift in the room's energy. When David began to rock in his autism-driven rhythm, she immediately adjusted the tempo to match him, making his movement part of the music rather than a distraction. "Miss Collins," Timothy raised his hand, "can you see the piano now?" Amanda moved to the old upright piano that dominated one corner of the room. Her hands found the keys by memory, but for the first time in 5 years, she could see the contrast between black and white keys, even if the details remained fuzzy. "I can see which keys are which," she said, wonder coloring her voice. "Want to help me play our song?" Our song turned out to be a simple melody Amanda had composed for the class, with words about being brave and kind and finding your voice. The children sang with the unself-conscious enthusiasm of their age, and George found himself playing along, harmonizing naturally. During the instrument exploration time that followed, George opened his mystery bag. "I brought something for each of you," he announced, producing small harmonicas, each in a different colored case. "Ms. Collins told me you've been working on breath control and pitch. These will help." The children's excitement was palpable, but it was Amanda's face that caught George's attention. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she held one of the harmonicas, her limited vision allowing her to see its silver gleam. "You didn't have to do this," she whispered. "Music should be accessible to everyone," he replied simply. "These kids deserve instruments they can take home and practice with." As George showed the children basic harmonica techniques, Amanda felt small fingers tugging at her sleeve. David, who rarely initiated contact, was trying to show her something. She knelt beside him, squinting at the paper he'd given her earlier. "Mrs. Patterson," she called, "could you help me? David's trying to show me something, but I can't quite make it out." The older teacher came over, took one look at the paper, and her voice went thick with emotion. "It's a drawing, Amanda. He drew you surrounded by musical notes, but the notes are all different colors. And at the bottom, he wrote, well, printed. Really, Ms. Collins sees music." Amanda pulled David into a gentle hug, feeling him stiffen, then slowly relax. "You're right, sweet boy. I do see music. And you help me remember that there's more than one way to see." The class continued with George teaching them Deep in the Heart of Texas, complete with the traditional claps that had the children giggling with delight. Amanda watched, or perhaps experienced was a better word, as her students blossomed under the attention of this country music legend who treated them like the important musicians they were. "Mr. George," Destiny asked during a water break, "are you Miss Collins's boyfriend?" The innocent question caused Amanda to choke on her water while George chuckled. "I'm her friend," he said simply. "Sometimes that's even better than a boyfriend." My mama says you're famous, Marcus added, clearly having done some research since class began. She plays your songs in the car. Well, I do play music for my job, George acknowledged. But you know what? Teaching music with Ms. Collins. Today has been more fun than any concert I've played recently. Really? The children chorused in disbelief. Really? Concerts are wonderful, but this, sharing music with you, seeing how much you've learned from Ms. Collins, this is special. As the class period drew to a close, Amanda had the children perform their signature song for George, a composition they'd created together about resilience and hope. She conducted from the piano, her partial sight allowing her to see their movements, if not their faces, her ears catching every voice, every instrument, every heart beating in rhythm. When the last note faded, George stood and applauded as if he were at the Grand Ole Opry. That was incredible. You should all be very proud. Miss Collins is right. You are musicians. As the children lined up to return to their regular classroom, each one hugged Amanda goodbye, whispering their joy at her return. David didn't hug, but stood close enough for her to feel his presence, his own form of affection. We'll practice our harmonicas, Maria promised. Every day, just like you taught us about practice. I know you will, Amanda said, her voice thick with emotion. And remember, music lives in here, she touched her heart, not just in the instruments. After the children left, Amanda sank onto the piano bench, overwhelmed. George sat beside her, their shoulders touching companionably. That was... he began, then stopped, searching for words. I know, Amanda said simply. They're amazing, aren't they? Every single one of them has a story, a struggle, a reason why music matters. Marcus's father left last year. Maria's family are immigrants who barely speak English, but music is universal. David. Well, you saw, music reaches him when words can't. And you reach them, George observed. Limited vision didn't hamper you at all in there. If anything, I think the kids were proud of you, seeing you work through the challenge. Amanda's hand found the keys, playing a soft melody unconsciously. These 3 weeks have been the hardest and most wonderful of my life. Learning to see, again, but also learning that I never really lost what mattered most. The music, the connection with the kids, the ability to teach, it was all still there, just waiting. What's next? George asked. The doctors seem optimistic about continued improvement. Cautiously optimistic, Amanda corrected. The pressure damage might continue to heal, or this might be as good as it gets. 60% vision in good. Lighting, they're estimating, enough to live independently, to teach, to see shadows and shapes and colors. Not enough to drive or read normal print without aids. It's a strange middle ground. But middle ground you can work with. Yes. She turned to face him, and for a moment the light from the window hit her face just right, allowing her to see more than shadows. The suggestion of kind eyes, the outline of a face that had become so important to her. George, I need to thank you, not just for today or the medical bills or staying with me in the hospital, but for seeing me, really seeing me, when I couldn't even see myself. George was quiet for a moment, then said, Can I tell you something? That night at the concert, when you collapsed, I was going through the motions. Another show, another crowd, another night of playing songs I've played 1,000 times. But watching you experience that music without being able to see the show, seeing how much every note meant to you, it reminded me why I started this journey. And the workshops with the kids made me remember that music isn't about the size of the venue or the number of albums sold. It's about connection. It's about a little boy with autism finding his voice through rhythm, or a shy girl discovering she can sing, or a teacher who sees with her heart better than most people see, with perfect vision. Amanda's fingers stilled on the keys. What are you saying? I'm saying that I want to do more. of this, not just today but regularly. I want to set up a program, music education for kids who might not otherwise have access, and I want you to help me design it." "Me?" Amanda's voice cracked. "But you're a teacher who understands that music is about more than perfect pitch or flawless technique. You're someone who's faced darkness and found light through sound. You're exactly who these kids need." The weight of his proposal settled over Amanda like a warm blanket. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it. We could start small, maybe a summer program here in Nashville. See how it goes. I have the resources, but you have the expertise and the heart." A knock on the door interrupted them. Mrs. Patterson entered with a smile that suggested she'd been crying. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but I had to tell you both. I've never seen the children respond like that to anyone. Amanda, they were different with you today. Seeing you overcome, seeing you work with your limitations, you've taught them more about resilience than 100 lectures could." "They taught me too," Amanda said softly. "They taught me that seeing isn't about eyes, it's about connection." After Mrs. Patterson left, George and Amanda sat in comfortable silence, the morning sun streaming through windows to create patterns of light and shadow that Amanda watched with wonder. "There's something else," George said eventually. "The rescheduled concert is next month. I want you there, front row center, but this time I want you to see it as well as hear it." "I'd love that," Amanda whispered, "to see the lights, the movement, even if it's just impressions. It would be like experiencing it all for the first time again." "And after the show," George continued, "there's someone I want you to meet, a specialist in adaptive music education from Vanderbilt. She's interested in your teaching methods, especially how you've developed techniques that work regardless of sensory limitations." Amanda felt overwhelmed by the sudden expansion of her world. 3 weeks ago, she'd been resigned to eternal darkness. Her world shrunk to what she could touch and hear. Now, possibilities were exploding like fireworks she could actually perceive, even if just as bursts of light. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why all of this for me?" George considered the question seriously. "Because you reminded me that music isn't about the musician. It's about the listener, the student, the heart that needs the song. You've spent years giving that gift to others, even when you couldn't see the impact. Maybe it's time someone gave back to you." "You already have," Amanda protested. "The surgery, the treatment, that was just fixing what was broken. The program, the opportunities, this is about building something new, something that uses everything you've learned in the darkness to help kids find their own light." Amanda felt tears threatening again. "I don't cry this much normally," she said with a watery laugh. "It's just been so overwhelming. Good overwhelming, but still." "I'd say you're entitled to some tears," George said gently. "You've been through more in the past few weeks than most people experience in a lifetime." They spent the next hour planning, dreaming really. George talked about venues that could host workshops, musicians who'd already expressed interest in participating. Amanda shared her ideas about curriculum that addressed the whole child, not just their musical ability. They sketched out a program that would be revolutionary in its approach, music education that adapted to each child's abilities and limitations rather than forcing them into a standard mold. "We could call it seeing music," Amanda suggested, "because that's what it's about, helping kids see the music inside themselves, regardless of their physical abilities." "I love it," George said immediately. "We'll need to start paperwork. Get non-profit status, find facilities." "You're serious about this?" Amanda interrupted, wonder in her voice. "This isn't just a publicity thing or a passing interest. You really want to do this?" "I've never been more serious about anything," George confirmed. "Amanda, do you know how many kids are out there like your students? Kids who think they can't do music because they don't fit the traditional mold. Kids who need what you offer. Amanda's mind was spinning with possibilities, but a sudden worry intruded. What if my vision gets worse again? What if... Then we adapt, George said firmly, just like you've been adapting all along. This program isn't dependent on you having perfect sight. It's dependent on you having perfect insight. And that's something you've already proven you possess. The school bell rang, signaling the end of the morning session. Soon the music room would fill with another group of students, another chance for Amanda to share the gift of music. But for now, in this moment between classes, she sat with a country music legend who'd become an unexpected friend, planning a future she'd never dared imagine. "I should prepare for the next group," she said reluctantly. "Want company? I cleared my whole day for this." Amanda's smile was radiant. "The fifth graders are next. They're working on composition. Think you could handle teaching them about song structure? With you as my co-teacher, I think I can manage." As they prepared for the next class, Amanda caught herself humming. Amarillo by morning, of course. But now it carried new meaning. The sunrise her father had always told her about wasn't just the literal dawn. It was moments like this, when purpose and possibility aligned, when darkness gave way not to perfect light, but to sufficient light, when music became a bridge between what was lost and what could be found. "Hey, Amanda," George called from where he was tuning his guitar. "Yeah? That night at the concert when you collapsed, I think it was supposed to happen. Not the medical emergency part, obviously, but us meeting, this program, these kids. I think sometimes life puts us exactly where we need to be." Amanda touched her medallion, thinking of her father, of the long, dark years, of the light that had returned in more ways than one. "I think you might be right. And George? Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself, and for helping me realize that I'd been seeing all along, just in a different way." The fifth graders began filing in, chattering excitedly about the famous visitor Mrs. Patterson had told them about. As Amanda moved to greet them, her partial vision allowing her to see their animated movements, if not their faces, she felt a completeness she hadn't experienced since before the darkness descended. She might never have perfect sight again, but she had something better, the vision to see potential in every child, the insight to understand that music transcended physical limitations, and the foresight to know that this was just the beginning of something beautiful. 1 month later, the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville was electric with anticipation. 20,000 fans filled every seat, but this time the energy felt different. This wasn't just another George Strait concert. This was the show that had been postponed for an act of humanity that had captured the world's attention. In the front row, center stage, Amanda Collins sat with Melissa at her side. The partial vision she'd gained allowed her to see the grand sweep of the arena, the stage lights creating halos of color that danced in her limited sight. She wore a new dress, deep blue, Melissa had assured her, and her father's medallion caught the light with each breath. "Can you see okay?" Melissa asked for the 10th time. "I can see enough," Amanda replied, her voice filled with wonder. "The lights are like stars, Mel. Thousands of stars I thought I'd never see again." Around them, fans kept turning to look, some recognizing Amanda from the viral videos, others simply curious about the woman who'd caused George Strait to walk off stage mid-concert. But Amanda was oblivious to the attention, her partially restored vision focused on the stage where any moment now the man who'd changed her life would appear. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed, "please welcome back to Nashville the one and only George Strait." The roar that followed was deafening, but Amanda barely heard it. Her eyes, limited as they were, caught the movement of a familiar figure walking onto the stage. The black hat was a shadow against the lights, but she could see it. She could see him. "Good evening, Nashville," George's voice filled the arena. "Before we start, I need to say something. A month ago, on this very stage, something happened that reminded me why we do this, why music matters. Some of you were here that night. The crowd murmured, those who'd witnessed Amanda's collapse whispering to their companions. A woman named Amanda Collins has been coming to my shows for years, George continued. She kept coming even after she lost her sight 5 years ago. She reminded me that music isn't about what you see, it's about what you feel. Amanda, I know you're here tonight, and this first song is for you. The opening chords of I Cross My Heart filled the arena, and 20,000 people held their breath. This was the song that had been interrupted, the moment when everything changed. But now, instead of tragedy, it carried triumph. Amanda's tears flowed freely as she swayed to the music, her hands finding Melissa's in the darkness that was no longer complete. She could see the movement on stage, the way George turned toward her section as he sang. When the crowd began singing along, their phone lights creating a galaxy of tiny stars, Amanda gasped at the beauty her healing eyes could perceive. "It's like the sunrise," she whispered to Melissa. "All those lights. It's like watching the sun come up." The concert continued, each song a gift to Amanda's partially restored vision. She saw the band's movements, the play of lights across the stage, the sea of cowboy hats bobbing in rhythm. It wasn't the clear, detailed vision she'd known before, but it was miraculous in its own way. Halfway through the show, George paused between songs. "Now, I want to tell you all about something special we're launching here in Nashville. It's called Seeing Music, and it's a program designed to bring music education to kids who might not otherwise have access. It's the brainchild of an extraordinary teacher who proves every day that you don't need perfect sight to have perfect vision." The spotlight, Amanda could see its bright beam, swung toward their section. She shrank back instinctively, but George's voice was gentle. "Amanda, would you and Melissa come up here for a minute? I promise it'll be worth it." Security appeared to escort them, and Amanda found herself climbing stairs she could partially see, walking across a stage that had lived in her imagination for so long. The crowd's applause was thunderous, but all Amanda could focus on was the figure waiting at center stage. "Can you see this?" George asked softly, for her ears only. "Shadows and light," she replied. "But the most beautiful shadows I've ever seen." He took her hand, turning her to face the audience. "Nashville, this is Amanda Collins. She's a music teacher who spent the last 5 years teaching kids that music lives in your heart, not your eyes. She's also the inspiration behind Seeing Music, which will provide free music education to children with all abilities and challenges." The crowd erupted again, but George wasn't done. "Tonight, we're not just announcing the program, we're celebrating it. Amanda, your students have something they want to show you." Confused, Amanda turned as small figures began filing onto the stage. Even with limited vision, she recognized the way they moved. Marcus's bouncing energy, Maria's shy shuffle, David's measured steps. "My kids," she breathed. "We've been practicing, Ms. Collins." Marcus's voice carried clearly. "Mr. George taught us your favorite song." 20 small voices, accompanied by their harmonicas and George's guitar, began singing Amarillo by Morning. But they'd changed the words, made it about their teacher who'd shown them that morning always comes, even after the darkest night. Amanda sobbed openly as her students sang about finding music in the darkness, about a teacher who saw their hearts when she couldn't see their faces. When the song ended, the arena was silent for a heartbeat before exploding into the loudest ovation of the night. Parents in the audience wept openly, the band members were wiping their eyes, and George Strait, the king of country music, pulled Amanda into a hug that said everything words couldn't. "Look up," he whispered in her ear. Amanda tilted her head back and gasped. The arena's ceiling was filled with thousands of light-up wristbands the crew had distributed before the show, all pulsing in rhythm like visual music. With her partial sight, it looked like the night sky had come alive with dancing stars. "This is for you," George said into the microphone, "for everyone who's ever found light in the darkness, who's ever believed that music can heal what medicine can't touch. This is for the teachers who see potential where others see problems. This is for Amanda." He began playing a new song, one Amanda had never heard before. As the words washed over her, she realized it was about her, about finding sight through sound, about teaching through touch, about the morning that comes not with the sunrise, but with the moment you realize darkness hasn't diminished your light. The children surrounded her as George sang, their small hands finding hers, their voices joining in on the chorus they'd secretly learned. Amanda felt Melissa's arm around her waist, anchor and support as always. And in that moment, with limited vision that let her see the important shapes, if not the fine details, Amanda understood something profound. She'd spent 5 years mourning the loss of her sight. But standing on this stage, surrounded by the children she'd taught and the music she loved, she realized she'd never really lost anything that mattered. She'd simply learned to see differently. The song ended, and George turned to her. "Amanda, you've given us all a gift, the reminder that vision isn't about eyes, it's about heart, and you've got the biggest heart I've ever known." As they prepared to leave the stage, Amanda caught George's arm. "Wait," she said, her teacher's instincts kicking in. "The kids should bow, they're performers now." 28-year-olds took their bows to thunderous applause, their faces shining with pride that Amanda could see even through her limitations. As they filed off stage, each one hugged her, whispering their love and promises to practice hard for the next performance. "Next performance?" Amanda asked George as they returned to their seats. "Did I forget to mention? Seeing Music is launching with a benefit concert. You and the kids are the headline act." The rest of the concert passed in a blur of music and emotion. Amanda found herself seeing things she'd never noticed, even with perfect vision. The way George's body language changed with each song's emotion, the silent communication between band members, the collective breath of an audience completely entranced. During Check Yes or No, the song that had been playing when her journey with George began, he caught her eye and winked. She could see it. Not clearly, but enough to know that this unexpected friendship had become one of the most important relationships in her life. The encore was Amarillo by Morning, of course, but this time George invited Amanda back on stage. 5 years ago, this woman's father used to describe sunrises to her when she couldn't see them. Tonight, I want her to describe what she sees to us. Standing at the microphone, Amanda looked out at the sea of lights and movement. "I see hope," she began, her voice growing stronger. "I see 20,000 hearts beating in rhythm. I see that darkness is just the space between stars, and there are so many stars. I see that my father was right. The sunrise isn't about the sun. It's about believing the light will come, even when you can't see it yet." She paused, her partial vision allowing her to make out George's encouraging nod. 5 years ago, I thought blindness meant the end of my world, but it was really the beginning of a different one, a world where I learned to see with my ears, my hands, my heart. And now, with this gift of partial sight, I see that both worlds can exist together. Thank you for being part of my sunrise. The arena erupted one final time, and George played them out with a reprise of the children's version of Amarillo by Morning. As the last notes faded, he took Amanda's hand for the final bow. "How do you feel?" he asked as they walked off stage. "Like I'm seeing everything for the first time," Amanda replied, "even the things I can't quite see." The months that followed were a whirlwind. Seeing Music launched with support that exceeded everyone's expectations. The benefit concert raised enough to fund the first year of operations, and then some. Amanda found herself designing curriculum, training teachers, and traveling to speak about adaptive music education. Her vision stabilized at about 60% in good lighting, enough to read large print, to see her students' faces when they were close, to navigate the world with confidence, if not complete clarity. She got special glasses that helped with contrast and magnification, and slowly rebuilt her life with new parameters. But the biggest change wasn't in what she could see, it was in how she was seen. No longer just the blind music teacher. She became a symbol of resilience, of finding purpose in limitation, of teaching others to see beyond the obvious. 1 year after her collapse, Amanda stood in the brand new Seeing Music Center in Nashville. The walls were painted in bright colors she could actually perceive, the practice rooms filled with adaptive instruments and technology. Children with all kinds of challenges, blindness, deafness, autism, physical limitations, learn music in ways tailored to their abilities. "Miss Amanda," a new student called out, "listen to what I learned." As the child played a simple melody on a keyboard with color-coded keys, Amanda smiled. She could see the colors now, could watch the small fingers finding their way. But more importantly, she could hear the joy, the discovery, the moment when a child realizes they can make music. George appeared in the doorway, as he often did when he was in town. "Sounds like another musician is born," he observed. "Every day," Amanda agreed. "Every single day." They stood together, watching the child explore the keyboard with growing confidence. Through the window, Nashville's skyline stretched out, buildings Amanda could see in outline, if not detail. Somewhere out there, her former students were using music in their own lives. Marcus had joined his middle school band. Maria sang in her church choir. David had found a way to communicate through piano that words had never provided. "Any regrets?" George asked quietly. Amanda touched her medallion, thinking of all the ways her life had changed. "How can I regret the journey that brought me here? If I'd never lost my sight, I'd never have learned to truly see. If I'd never collapsed at your concert, none of this would exist." "Fate has a funny way of working things out," George agreed. "Or maybe it's not fate," Amanda suggested. "Maybe it's just people choosing to see possibility where others see. Problems? You saw something in me that night, something worth saving, worth supporting. You helped me see it too." "You were always worth it," George said simply. "I just held up a light so you could find your own way." As the day progressed, Amanda moved through the center with confidence born of purpose. She taught a group class for visually impaired children, showing them her own techniques for experiencing music through touch and sound. She consulted with a music therapist about a child with cerebral palsy who showed remarkable rhythm awareness. She sat with parents, sharing her story and helping them see their children's potential rather than their limitations. When evening came, she found herself alone in the main performance space, a small auditorium designed with both visual and acoustic accessibility in mind. The sunset through the western windows created patterns of light and shadow that her healing eyes could appreciate. She sat at the piano, a beautiful grand, donated by an anonymous benefactor she strongly suspected was George, and began to play. Not a song anyone would recognize, just melodies that flowed from her heart through her fingers. Music that spoke of darkness and light, of loss and discovery, of the moment when you realize that what you thought was an ending was actually a beginning. "That's beautiful," Melissa's voice came from the doorway. "New composition?" "Maybe. I'm thinking of calling it 60% because that's all the vision I have, but it's 100% enough." Melissa joined her on the bench, their shoulders touching in familiar comfort. You know what I love most about this place? It's not just about music. It's about showing kids that their limitations don't define them. Because they don't, Amanda said firmly. They just redirect us. Like water finding a new path when the old one is blocked. The destination doesn't change, just the journey. As if summoned by their conversation, several children appeared in the doorway, students from the after-school program who couldn't quite bring themselves to leave. Without formal invitation, they joined Amanda at the piano, their hands finding percussion instruments, their voices ready, and there in the fading light that Amanda could see in soft impression, they made music. Not perfect music. Little hands missed beats, voices cracked on high notes. The piano had one key that stuck, stubbornly. But it was real music, born of joy and community and the absolute certainty that everyone had something to contribute. Amanda closed her eyes for a moment. Not from necessity now, but from choice, letting the sound wash over her. When she opened them again, the shadows had grown longer, but her vision remained. Partial, imperfect, but hers. Ms. Amanda, one of the children asked, "Will you tell us the story again, about the night you couldn't see but the music saved you?" Amanda smiled, gathering the children closer. "Well, it started with a song and a collapse, and a country singer who wouldn't let me fall alone." As she told the story, embellishing it for young ears, adding lessons about kindness and perseverance, Amanda realized this was her true calling. Not just teaching music, but teaching hope. Not just sharing songs, but sharing the certainty that light exists even when you can't see it. The center grew quiet as parents arrived to collect their children, each one thanking Amanda for what she'd given their child. But as the last student left and Melissa helped her close up for the night, Amanda knew the truth. She'd received far more than she'd given. "Same time tomorrow?" Melissa asked as they stood in the doorway. "Same time tomorrow," Amanda confirmed, "and the day after that, and the day after that." As they walked to Melissa's car, Amanda looked back at the building. With her 60% vision, she could see its outline against the evening sky. Could make out the sign that read, "Seeing Music" in letters large enough for her to read. It wasn't the life she'd planned, wasn't the career she'd dreamed of when she had perfect sight and unlimited possibilities. It was better. Because sometimes you have to lose your sight to gain your vision. Sometimes you have to fall in darkness, to rise in light. And sometimes a country song interrupted by catastrophe becomes the beginning of a symphony you never knew you were meant to conduct. Amanda touched her father's medallion one last time as they drove away, whispering a thank you to the man who taught her that morning always comes. He'd been right, of course. It had just taken her a while to realize that morning doesn't always look like the sun rising over Amarillo. Sometimes it looks like shadows and shapes that shouldn't be enough, but are. Sometimes it sounds like children, discovering they can make music despite their challenges. Sometimes it feels like the hand of a country music legend, helping you stand when you're sure you'll fall. And sometimes, just sometimes, it's all of those things combined into a life. That's 60% of what you expected, but 100% of what you needed. The story that began with 20,000 voices singing in the dark had become a chorus of young voices learning to find their own light. And Amanda Collins, who once thought blindness meant the end of her music, had discovered it was really just a key change in a song that would play forever. In Nashville, where music flows like water and dreams take shape in 3-chord progressions, the Seeing Music Center stands as a testament to the night when tragedy became triumph. And somewhere in Texas, if you listen carefully on a quiet morning, you might hear the ghost of a truck driver humming along to Amarillo by morning, proud of his daughter who learned to see the sunrise even in the darkness, and who now teaches others to do the same. The music never stopped, it just learned a new way to be seen.